The first time my boss asked me why I wouldn't look at her, the entire office seemed to stop breathing. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, keyboards froze mid-stroke, and my pulse thundered so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. She was standing just a few feet away, close enough that I could smell her jasmine perfume and see the faint tremble in her hands. Her voice wasn't angry, it wasn't even sharp, it was soft, almost wounded, and that softness was what nearly broke me. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that sneaks up on you when you least expect it, take a second right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is feel. Her name was Rachel Whitmore, and she was the youngest regional director our company had ever appointed in Chicago, Illinois. I was just another mid-level analyst, tucked into a gray cubicle near the back wall, invisible by design. My name is Jonathan Hayes, and for most of my life I preferred it that way. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one could see the cracks. Rachel had transferred from our New York branch 6 months earlier. She walked into our office like a gust of wind off Lake Michigan, sharp, confident, impossible to ignore. She restructured departments, implemented new systems, and expected excellence without apology. Some people resented her for it, others admired her. I did both. The problem wasn't that I disliked her. The problem was that whenever she stood close to me, whenever she leaned over my desk to review a report, something inside me shifted. The air grew heavier, my thoughts tangled. I forgot that she signed my paychecks and that I answered to her authority. I just saw her. Saw the exhaustion she tried to hide behind perfect posture, the faint scar along her wrist, the sadness that lingered in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. And that's why I avoided looking at her. 3 years earlier, I had moved to Chicago from a small town in Ohio after my engagement fell apart. My fiancée, Megan, had left me 2 months before our wedding, saying I was too guarded, too distant. She told me loving me felt like loving a locked door. After she walked away, I promised myself I'd never let work and emotions mix again. I built walls so high even I couldn't see over them. Rachel made those walls feel paper thin. The day she confronted me, it was late. Most of the staff had already left. Snow drifted past the office windows, soft and relentless. I was finishing a quarterly projection when her heels stopped beside my desk. I kept my eyes fixed on the spreadsheet. She asked why I wouldn't look at her. My mouth went dry. For months, I had mastered the art of looking at her shoulder, her notepad, the wall behind her head, anywhere but her eyes. But that night, something in her tone demanded honesty. I told her it was because when I did look at her, I forgot she was my boss. The words felt reckless, dangerous, but they were true. Silence stretched between us, thick and electric. I finally forced myself to meet her gaze. Her expression wasn't offended, it was startled, as if she'd been holding her breath for an answer she never expected to receive. Rachel had divorced 2 years earlier. The rumors around the office were harsh and speculative, but I had overheard just enough to know it had been painful. She threw herself into work afterward, climbing faster and higher than anyone predicted. Success became her armor. Authority became her shield. But that night, standing under harsh office lighting with snow swirling outside, she didn't look like a regional director. She looked like a woman who was tired of being strong all the time. The weeks that followed were different, not dramatic, not scandalous, just different. She stopped by my desk more often, but not always about work. She asked about my mother's health after I mentioned a hospital visit. She brought in homemade banana bread one morning and left a slice on my desk with a sticky note that simply said, "For surviving budget season." I tried to keep my distance. I reminded myself of company policies, of HR trainings, of how fragile reputations could be. I needed this job. My mother's medical bills were stacking up back in Ohio. I couldn't afford to risk everything because my heart beat faster around my boss. But emotions don't care about spreadsheets. One evening in March, a storm knocked out power across half the city. The office emptied early, but Rachel and I stayed behind to finalize a presentation for corporate. When the lights flickered out completely, plunging us into darkness, the building fell eerily silent. We found ourselves sitting across from each other in the dim glow of emergency lights. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline. For the first time, there were no distractions. No employees, no emails, no titles. Just two people in the quiet. She told me she was afraid of going home to an empty condo. I told her I understood what it felt like to sit in silence so loud it hurt. We didn't touch, we didn't cross any obvious lines, but something shifted deeper than policy could define. The real challenge came when rumors began. Someone noticed how often she stopped by my desk. Someone saw us leaving together after that storm, even though we had driven in opposite directions. Whispers spread like wildfire. A colleague warned me that HR was keeping an eye on things. I panicked. The old fear returned, clawing at my chest. I started avoiding her again. Short answers, minimal eye contact, professional to the point of coldness. I convinced myself I was protecting both of us. Rachel felt it immediately. One afternoon, she called me into her office. The blinds were half drawn, sunlight striping across her desk. She looked composed, but her eyes betrayed confusion. She said she valued professionalism. She said she would never jeopardize her position or mine. Then she admitted quietly that pushing me away felt worse than the rumors. For the first time, I saw tears gather in her eyes, and that broke something inside me. I realized I had spent my entire life running from vulnerability. I had let Megan walk away because it was easier than fighting for love. I had built walls at work because it felt safer than risking embarrassment. And now, I was about to lose something real again. Not because it was wrong, but because I was afraid. So I did the scariest thing I've ever done. I requested a transfer. 2 weeks later, corporate approved my move to a sister branch in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a lateral shift, same pay, same responsibilities. On paper, it looked like career development. In reality, it was my way of removing the power imbalance that stood between us. On my last day in Chicago, I walked into Rachel's office one final time. The skyline shimmered behind her. She looked smaller somehow, less shielded. I told her I couldn't keep pretending she was just my boss. I told her I respected her too much to let gossip define us. And I told her that once I reported to someone else, if she still felt the same, I would finally look at her without fear. Her composure cracked then. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me, not as a superior, not as a director, but as Rachel. The embrace was steady, grounding, real. 6 months later, on a cool autumn evening by Lake Michigan, she visited Milwaukee. I wasn't her employee anymore. I wasn't hiding behind cubicles or avoiding her eyes. When I looked at her that night, I didn't forget she had once been my boss. I simply didn't care. Love doesn't always arrive in convenient packages. Sometimes it challenges us to confront our deepest insecurities. Sometimes it asks us to risk comfort for something greater. Rachel eventually stepped down from her Chicago position and accepted a strategic role closer to Milwaukee. It surprised everyone. It didn't surprise me. For the first time, she was choosing happiness over image. We took things slowly, carefully, respectfully, and a year later, standing on a quiet pier with city lights reflecting in the water, I asked her to marry me. She said yes, tears streaming down her face, the same softness in her voice that had once asked why I wouldn't look at her. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind us love is worth the risk. Before we end, here's a special request. Comment the word courage if you believe facing your fears can change your life. Because sometimes the reason we can't look at someone isn't fear of authority. It's fear of feeling something so powerful it rewrites who we are. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is finally look.